Other than a few years of music school when I was really young, I've basically been a self-taught pianist, composer. Whether I'm putting on a solo act or if I'm working with other musicians, I perform improvisationally. Each one of my compositions is always evolving, and each time that I perform, whether it's by myself or with other musicians, they take a different shape and form. About 5 years ago, I was given a piano and I needed a rehearsal space. And I said, okay, well, let me check out this warehouse. Since this has become my rehearsal space, I pretty much shifted from doing graphic design to fully doing just music. Each time I would come here to rehearse, I would walk around and look at the different artifacts, and I felt that they had to be somewhere else. But instead they were just kind of stored and hoarded in this building. It's almost like they're alive, and the creativity that went into making these objects is still alive. I also, over time, started noticing the collection itself as being an object. I made a song called The Warehouse Being, and it has this like roaring sound. And then there's like a little part where it's really light and bright, but then it goes back to the madness and the darkness and the mystery of it. When I met Denis, Maher at the Mattress factory and saw his installation, it made a lot of sense. It is so full of stuff and things are everywhere, just like the warehouse. It just made sense to put music inside of Denis's installation. So whenever Denis first showed me the installation, he pointed out that there were holes that he made in the floors. And we put a speaker up on the 3rd floor, and then we discovered that you can still hear the music on the 1st floor very faintly, and then as you go up, it becomes louder and louder. In a way, the music kind of guided the audience through the installation upwards. I've been trained in design and visual language. It made perfect sense to me how to translate visual objects into sound. A local artist, Kevin Bednar, and I were already collaborating. Kevin and I took sound samples from the installation itself, the creaking of the floors, opening and closing of doors, different tools that Denis has used. When you're walking through the installation, it sounds like the installation is moving. Maybe they're moving parts, or it's still being constructed or alive, or it's still being worked on. It's a piece that's evolving. Once the music was in there, the entire piece was animated suddenly, much like the sound animates movies, right, in soundtrack design. I love creating atmospheres, and I think that there's an art of the event, so you're kind of serving the music in a certain environment. One of the challenges with Pittsburgh is that there are very few venues with pianos. From the very beginning, I would find venues that have pianos, and then I would create my own events. I started collaborating with other artists, having collaborative type of events. In this process, I ended up meeting Daniel Reger and decided to start a series of events called PIANOCENTRICITY. We decided to invite as many pianists in Pittsburgh, mostly original composers, ranging from experimental music to classical to singer-songwriter. And at the end of the event, we opened the piano to the audience for anyone to play, basically an open piano. We decided to work with dancers, and then we also worked with a videographer, Nate Cake, custom tailored some of the visuals. Working with visual artists is part of setting that backdrop ambiance and expanding on the experience for the audience so that it's an experiential event and not just like a performance on the stage. Of course, the interest was really big, especially the DIY musicians. The very first one, it was a full house. We do have a strong community. I also feel that we could share this with a greater audience because it has been growing and evolving from its inception, so I could see that it could go in different directions.